be superficial here. In my dissection, I don't want to be deep because the drainage of the TPF flap will go through some of this tissue. So we will carefully elevate the skin. The skin often has little dimples, and so we have to be careful and get on the cartilage and try to not buttonhole the skin. Here's the piece of cartilage. The cartilage remnant is like an iceberg. It is always bigger than it seems. And in terms of getting a nice ear reconstruction, it's important to remove all this cartilage. So this cartilage remnant, I'm going to stay right on the remnant here, and we'll take it out and save it for use as a tragus. So this is the cartilage remnant, and you'll see it's much bigger. It'll extend all the way down to here. But if you don't take it out, you don't get a nice conchal bowl. And we want to have not only a nice conchal bowl, but the appearance in this child of a faux canal. So his artery, instead of running like this, will actually run right underneath this cartilage and come like this. So it runs immediately under that, and if you're not aware of that, you can injure it when you're taking this out. So here's the cartilage, and we're going to save that. I'm going to do a little dissection here just to give us better access. And I use a cautery, and it's very important to use the lowest setting on the cautery that is effective. So we use a blended cautery. Each machine is a little different, so you'll have to use a cautery that works with your particular machine, but I'm using about a 15 coag and a 20 level of cutting in a blended mode. And I like to start here because the plane is easy to find and there's no blood vessels here that you could injure. And then as you work around, we'll come to these vessels here, and there's often a post-auricular vessel here. When we dissect, you can use the sucker as a retractor as well, because as you get up under the flap, I'm not that far yet, you will have smoke, and so it'll be harder to see. So it's helpful to have a retractor. I use this tonsil retractor. So you can see I'm under the scalp. I'm dissecting the subcutaneous layer off of the fascia. So here is our superficial temporal artery right here, coming up, and then dividing into an anterior branch and then the main branch, just as we had marked it on the external. So right here it came up, it goes to anterior branch and a main branch. So underneath we can see that. And now we will dissect just anterior to the anterior branch, because that'll be the anterior limit of our flap. You can see the bifurcation into the main and anterior branches right there. But there you can see the main branch coming up and then bifurcating there into a branch that goes next to the pledget. That's the main branch, and then the anterior branch is going anteriorly. I'm just putting tension on the flap with my sucker, and I'm coming anteriorly. If the anterior branch of the superficial temporal artery is clearly visible, I divide the anterior edge of my TPF flap now. If the vessel has gone into spasm, then I will not dissect or divide the anterior edge, because I can't see it very well, and I will go ahead and inject the opposite ear and perhaps even harvest the skin from the opposite ear to give the vessel a chance to dilate so I can see it better, and therefore I can make my cut just anterior to the anterior branch of the superficial temporal artery. And it's not just a matter of curving the end. You see it's quite long. The flap is quite long, comes around the bottom, but we want to contour it into the bowl. So I think we have enough flap quite nicely. So I don't think we have to release any more there. We like to use a leash to suspend the implant, which keeps it from migrating inferiorly. The implant tends to migrate sometimes 5 or 6 millimeters inferiorly over time in the postoperative period. And we found that using the leash will keep that from happening. The leash that we use is an inferiorly based, vertically oriented fascial flap of deep temporal fascia that we take off of the temporalis muscle. Raising up this little leash of deep temporal fascia from the temporalis muscle, and I'm basing it where my scratch was at the beginning of the case, because I don't want it to, I want it to suspend the implant, or basically make it not to descend, but I don't want it to either pull the implant backward or forward. So here's the leash, the scratch that we made at the beginning of the procedure, and here's the location. It's the same location. And now, in order for it to suspend the implant, we need to tunnel it through from outside in. So we will use 2 little hemostats. So now we have that flap. The leash is wrapped around the amputated helical root of the implant and sutured to itself with 2 4/0 figure of 8 sutures. So I'm just putting it around the top of the implant. Caitlin's holding it, and then I'll secure it with a figure of 8 4/0 PDS. So you can see our flap is long here, but you'd think it's long, but by the time you can push it into the interstices, or the convolutions, I should say, of the flap, it's not as long. So I don't want to injure the anterior vessel, but I want to try to suture the flap back to the periosteum at the back of the bowl. So here I've applied suction to the drain, and you can see that the flap is contoured nicely. Okay, so there is our flap. And we try to put that suture line at the top of the ear rim or behind the ear rim so that the postauricular skin is not visible. We suture the postauricular skin from the opposite ear to the groin skin with multiple interrupted 5/0 chromic catgut sutures. So we have to have an airtight closure to be able to get the air to come out, because even though we suction the flap down against the implant, when we put the skin on it, like here, there's air under there. See that? So if we push the air out, it just comes right back, unless you have sort of an airtight closure of your suture lines, and then you can press the air out and it'll stay out.